Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Taboo Table Talk. I'm your host, Krish Mohan, and these are your pre-show announcements. Hey, I want to let you guys know about the last four shows of 2021. Three of them are virtual shows that can be attended by anyone from anywhere because they are going to be performed over Zoom. And you get to be a part of the virtual audience for these shows. And then there is one live in-person show in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So tomorrow, December 10th, if you're listening to this on the day that this comes out, December 10th, I'm going to be hosting a fundraiser for the Pittsburgh DSA's Feed the Hood program. This is kind of similar to what the Black Panthers did with their free breakfast program and what Food Not Bombs does by helping feed people that need to be fed that are often overlooked. These are low income communities, unhoused folks. So in the same spirit, the Pittsburgh DSA is running a program where they're going to feed people that have been overlooked by our current government, give back to the community, and so on and so forth. So we're raising funds, and the way we're raising funds is that we're doing a virtual show, so all of the ticket sales actually go right back into this program to help them succeed, to help them sustain themselves for a long period of time. So that's tomorrow, December 10th, 8 p.m. We have fantastic music, fantastic comedy. I'm going to be hosting. So come on out. And here's a little bonus. If you get tickets to tomorrow's show, to December 10th's Pittsburgh DSA fundraiser, you get free entrance to my show on December 11th at 8 p.m. over Zoom. The December 11th show is going to be my virtual stand-up comedy show. I'm going to be running my entire hour. Citizen Revolution, especially since I had to cancel so many tour dates this year because the pandemic was starting to get worse by the fall. Things seem to be getting a little bit better now, kind of, sort of. But since I had to cancel all those dates, I've been doing my new hour of stand up virtually over Zoom. I did one on Black Friday. I'm doing one again on December 11th. If you attend the Pittsburgh DSA fundraiser, you get free entrance to that December 11th show as well. And then on December 17th, I'm going to be doing a Forkful of Noodles virtual recording. So if you want to be a part of the audience for that show, that's December 17th. And we're going to be talking about China. We're going to be talking about xenophobia, the history of China, why there's so much aggression towards China. So if that is a topic that is of interest to you, please attend the December 17th show. And finally, the last show of 2021 is December 18th. It's a live in-person show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the Funhouse at Mr. Small's at 8:30 p.m. I'm going to be headlining. I'm going to be performing new material, my new hour, Citizen Revolution. I will be performing that. Tickets are available right now for that show. And I will also let you guys know that the Funhouse and Mr. Smalls do check vaccination cards. And if you don't have a vaccination card, or if you're uncertain whether you want to get vaccinated, and so on and so forth, but still want to attend the show, that's okay. If you can prove that you got a negative test 48 hours before the show, I believe they will let you in. But if you are unvaccinated, they do require and suggest that you guys wear masks indoors just for the safety of everyone there, the performers, the staff, so we can continue doing shows and continue having live performances at these venues. So the venue is very much trying really, really hard not to bar people out of their thing, but also keep their performers, keep their staff, and keep the regular audience safe as well. So just something to keep in mind if you are planning on attending the December 18th show at the Funhouse at Mr. Smalls. Where do you find tickets for all this? You can find tickets for all of these shows directly on my website at krishmohanhaha.com. It's KRISHMOHANHAHA.com. You can do a bunch of stuff on my website. Check out my past albums, past episodes of this show, and you can become a sustaining member as well, which will give you free entry to all of the virtual shows. And when touring kicks back up, hopefully in 2022, we'll be able to tour a little bit more regularly. In 2022, when I come to your city, because you would be a sustaining member, you would get free entry to those shows as well. So I hope to see you guys at these last couple shows of the year, and we'll close out the year that has been 2021, because it was kind of a thing that happened, um, and close it out on a positive note, together, in solidarity, talking about some important stuff, learning and growing. With each other, having some good, interesting conversations. So, with all that said and done, let's dive into this week's episode. Enjoy it, everybody. Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Taboo Table Talk. I'm your host, Krish Mohan, and I'm very excited for our guest today. It's Kevin Gosztola. Kevin Gosztola is back on the show. Very excited to have him back on the program here to talk more about the one and only Julian Assange. Recently, we saw the extradition case get reopened as the U.S. appealed the decision that was made in January. The judge, Vanessa Barrister, basically said that Julian Assange's mental health is in jeopardy and would worsen if he went to the United States prison industrial complex, and the U.S. prisons are so bad that his mental health condition is not up to par, and the system is so bad that he would commit suicide. So the U.S. appealed that decision and basically, attacked Assange's mental health, which is a major part of what we're going to be discussing today. Is that attack on his mental health? So Kevin was in attendance to that 2-day trial, and we kind of talk about the details of it. And who knows, by the time you get to the end of this podcast, they might have made a decision on this case. And Kevin also goes over what the outcomes of the decisions will be, like what we can expect to see the U.S. do if the court, once again, the UK court, says that the U.S. cannot and should not extradite Julian Assange, which they shouldn't because they don't have a case. Let's not forget that their key witness committed perjury. They committed perjury, so immediately this whole case should be thrown out because he committed perjury. Not only that, he was a known FBI plant that stole over $50,000 from WikiLeaks, and he is a convicted child molester and a sociopath, which means he does not feel bad for those repeated acts of molestation and lying on stand, committing perjury. He does not feel bad for it. He's diagnosed sociopath. So that was their key witness, which I believe we get into a little bit of that as well. Primarily, Kevin and I discuss the appeal trial that happened for 2 days. About a month ago now, and I know some of you guys are like, Krish, that was a month ago. That's, I wish I could say something a month ago is old news, and I think this is a major problem in our society where the news cycle moves, forward and quickly, and we often forget about the stories that need following up on, the stories that should be in the back of our mind, and we often don't give those stories any sort of credence or weight. In the moment we do, and then we sort of move on to the next flavor of the week, to the next issue at hand. And this isn't me saying that these issues aren't important. Of course they're important. It's just I don't want people to forget. And quite often, because our media cycle works the way that it does, people often forget. And the issue with Assange, particularly, is that his name, his story, what he's going through is often not talked about in mainstream. It often is not made flavor of the week. So even in our lefty circles, I don't want us to forget that, because in sort of corporate mainstream liberal circles, Julian Assange isn't really even mentioned as something to talk about. So I want to keep this story in the media cycle in some way, shape, or form. When I was able to talk to Kevin about it, I wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to keep Assange's story around for a little while. So that's part of the reason why I also don't jump onto things very quickly, because I know that they're going to take some time to develop. I don't and I if I'm going to make a statement, if I'm going to have an opinion, if I'm going to write a comedy piece about it, I would like to know the ins and outs, or as much of the ins and outs as I can get, as possible, before making a statement. And the assumption that I make, and this is true in most cases, I think the people that that are in the lefty independent news media cycle or media sphere, when they make statements, when a headline breaks and they come out and they make a statement, I trust that the reason why they're making a statement rather immediately, which is not my particular style, or I try not to make it my particular style, but I trust that the folks that do make that statement pretty immediately, as long as they're not connected to any sort of corporate oligarchy, that they have done a lot of research on this topic already, because breaking news just doesn't arbitrarily happen. There is cause and effect put into play there. There is a series of events that led us to that conclusion, and the folks in lefty media that are making an immediate statement or critique or comment or response have been following those series of cause and effects for quite some time. So that's why I'm okay with lefty media kind of making bigger claims. But anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. I want to keep the Julian Assange case in the purview, in the forefront of people's mind as much as possible, because we could get a decision on this thing any minute. I mean, we could be getting a decision on this as you're listening to this right now. We could be getting a decision to it. So yeah, it's important to know, where these decisions are being made from, and whether you agree with them or not, and why you agree with them and disagree with them. Those are all important things for us to know. And folks like Kevin Gosztola, when it comes to Assange, when it comes to whistleblowers, when it comes to the State Department and the deep state, and privacy issues and how our rights are being violated, Kevin is on the forefront of covering those stories. So without any further ado, let's dive into this week's conversation with the ever so delightful and wonderful Kevin Gosztola, everybody. Enjoy it. Yeah, I think a good place to start is, I'm sure people that have heard you on this podcast before probably know what's going on with the Julian Assange trial, but they recently reopened, or they appealed the case, right? They appealed the case, and that's what the most recent chapter of the trial is. So what was did they say what the reason for their appeal was? Was that something they had to provide in this context, or was it just, hey, we're going to appeal it because we feel like we should?
Yeah, they generally disagree with the idea that Julian Assange would commit suicide and go insane in a US prison, which is what the conclusion was of the district judge, Vanessa Baretzer, who I understand isn't actually at that level anymore. She's moved on to another position, even though that's largely irrelevant to this conversation. But they uh, appealed because the ruling essentially I don't know if it would be precedent setting, but it presents a problem for U.S. cases when they're seeking extradition of people under this agreement with the British government. Because if a court is going to say that our prison system is so inhumane, so despicable, and so cruel to people who are kept inside of confinement, that they can't trust the U.S. government to take care of them while they're in their custody, then how are they going to get criminals that they actually believe that are actual criminals? Again, like
Mhm.
I'll say, like not all the time are people being extradited for political offenses. In this case, this is a political prosecution. But if they want to go after international drug traffickers, or they want to go after somebody who's accused of sex trafficking or human trafficking, or someone who's accused of crimes that were committed in the US but fled to London, they would have to go through this agreement. But if the UK government and the courts can't trust the US government to put them in a prison and treat them humanely, then I don't know how they pursue extradition successfully going forward. So I think that's probably their chief goal. They are focused on Julian Assange, the person, and bringing him here and continuing this political prosecution. But I also believe, and have since the ruling by Judge Vanessa Baretzer, that they have to overcome this decision and get it overturned so that they can continue with business as usual.
Is so her moving to a different position, is that why there was a new judge? Because that was one of the things I was a little confused by, is why was there a new judge presiding over the case?
No, it moved to the next level. So it moved to the appeals court.
Oh, okay.
And so the district court ruled, and then you go to the appeals court. And then the appeals court is going to. It's worth noting that you could go to post this, and then this might end up being a timely conversation because the high court, there's a rumor that is going around as a result of a reporter who is, I presume, relying on some kind of sources he has in the legal system. He's based in London, so this isn't someone who we can't trust. It's highly likely that he has picked up on something that is legitimate. So it could be in the next few days that we get a ruling on the appeal from the High Court of Justice. And this relates to a 2-day hearing that took place over a month ago at the end of October. And so, anyways, it's just to say that we're talking about something in the future, and it's possible people come to this video and hear our conversation, and we actually know that it has been denied. I can't predict what will happen, but if it is denied, then they will appeal. The U.S. government is going to appeal to the Supreme Court level in the United Kingdom, and we'll have another hearing, and they'll tell the Supreme Court why they believe it was wrong for the High Court of Justice to deny the extradition or to not overturn the lower court's decision. If the U.S. manages to convince the High Court of Justice that this judge was wrong, to believe that Julian Assange has suffered so much psychological torment that terrible things could happen to him if he was brought to the United States, then the Assange team will appeal, and they'll appeal to the Supreme Court. And so no matter what, the High Court is not going to be the final say in this case, unfortunately. But the big deal then becomes, and always has been the biggest deal, Julian Assange is in Belmarsh High Security Prison and has been since April 2019 when he was expelled from the Ecuador embassy. And he hasn't been allowed to be out on bail and even be on like home confinement with an ankle bracelet. So what becomes really important is there anything that can be done to free him from Belmarsh while the case goes forward at the Supreme Court level? Is there any way that the High Court of Justice might reverse course and say he's won, especially if he wins at the High Court level? Then he's got 2 victories notched against the extradition case from the U.S. Shouldn't he be allowed to be out on bail?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think the chances of that are, especially if he wins? Like, do you think that there is a high likelihood that they will say, "Hey, you get to go home and be on house arrest," or like, "We'll set you up with a place," or something like that?
Well, first off, it depends on if the Assange team makes a bail application.
Okay.
They have tactically made decisions in the past that were intended to not alienate the court. So they don't want to push too hard. They've, to some degree, accepted his position in jail through the course of the extradition. And there's only been a few times where it made sense to push for his release. And then there was the crisis of the pandemic, and they tried to use that to get him out on bail. But the district judge denied him the ability to be released during the pandemic. And so if they apply for another bail decision from the high court, which they could do, I think they could do this after their decision. They could come before the court and ask them to grant bail for Julian Assange. And then, and that, because it will not have gone before the Supreme Court until the US, or, well, so in this scenario, it will not go before the British Supreme Court until the US government files an application appealing the lower court decision. It's a little confusing, but basically, the High Court of Justice will still be in control after they issue their decision. They'll be in control of what happens with Assange. They're the ones that can order his release from Belmarsh.
Okay. Hopefully that happens. I mean, it's absurd that he's still in there. Like,
But
it's comical.
I'll say that the U.S. spins a lot of lies about Julian Assange, and the successful lie that they told to the district court back in January of this year after he prevailed was that Mexico's president said something on TV about offering asylum to Julian Assange. We're afraid he might try to scurry off to the Mexican embassy, and then we won't be able to pursue this extradition any longer because he'll claim asylum again. And then what do we do? And, you know, even though you might say, too bad, it's too fucking sad, man, they've treated the institution of political asylum with total contempt throughout all of this. You know,
Right.
they've made it like you're a fugitive from justice if you go seek asylum, which is just not something that is universally applied internationally, and especially by the U.S. State Department. You can probably fill a list of several dozen people who have sought asylum from Russia and from China, maybe even from Iran, and various other countries. There have been right-wing people who have sought asylum from the Venezuelan government, and because, you know, they committed crimes and they don't want to be held responsible for them. And that's very different than in this case. But my point here is that in all of those examples of people who you could maybe claim were charged with political offenses, they walk into the U.S. embassy and they claim asylum, and the U.S. takes them in, and there's no boo-hoo, you're a political fugitive or whatever from justice by these governments. Nobody listens to what China or Russia has to say as they claim that, like, these people committed crimes and they should be facing justice in their country. The U.S. whisks them off to wherever they're going to be living, and then that's all we hear from them. They don't go before a judge. They don't go on trial.
So they just kind of disappear out
Yeah,
of the
they get
public
to.
eye.
I mean, like, you know, the right wing Latin Americans get to go populate Miami and
Right.
and get rich doing whatever they're doing. You know.
Yeah, it's that tilted justice system. So I want the big thing I think you kind of brought up is the suicide attempt that they basically, I mean, and there's been a lot of evidence to say that he is suicidal. But some of the arguments that they brought up were, I mean, it's very surprising to me that the mental health community hasn't come out and supported Julian Assange, because there is so much importance put on his mental health, and it really seemed like they were basically saying like he's faking a lot of it. That that is that kind of an accurate way of portraying what they said?
They actually argue that he's faking a lot of it. There seems the prosecutor James Lewis, who claims to have a mega brain, came before the. I'm not kidding. This is like an actual thing that he put on his website, that he has a mega brain, and or a mega mind or something like that, and he stood before a judge, or he submitted something to the court and made the allegation that Julian Assange was reading the British Medical Journal and learning about things in the profession so that he could fake his symptoms successfully before a psychiatrist, which, I don't know, you'd have to be really, really good at doing. I mean, he saw this doctor, Michael Kopelman, who's a first-rate professional that, by the way, the prosecution has been smearing and going after him, and in an effort to destroy his reputation so that they can then potentially get this decision overturned. But he would have to, this doctor would have to, over the course of 6 or 7 months, would have to not be able to detect that Assange was faking. And I just don't think that anybody is that good at faking their symptoms. At some point, you're going to slip up, and there's going to be something the doctor is going to see, and he's going to know that that doesn't match with what I've been seeing in this patient for the last 3 or 4 months. Either he's getting better, or he's been taking me for a ride for the last 3 or 4 months. And so, which is to say that I think everything is really entirely genuine on the part. And if there's anything that he's hiding, if there's any thing that he is faking, it's actually in the opposite direction. It's not that he is. It's not that he is pretending he is mentally deteriorating. It's that he would go above and beyond to hide his mental deterioration, because he finds that it is torturous to be under a 24/7 total surveillance inside of the prison and have a complete and total loss of his privacy, and being put under a microscope is completely against, I think, everything that Julian Assange would support and wants. So he would rather fake that he's okay and then risk that these symptoms are being missed by the doctors, which would be bad for him and his health, because if he can't resist his suicidal impulses, then at any time in Belmarsh, he might not be able to deal with those demons inside of him. But still, it's more important to him, I think, that he have some space to himself while he's in Belmarsh, because he just doesn't want those intrusions happening so regularly into his prison life.
Yeah, and there's all these studies that say like you need some level of privacy in order to maintain some kind of positive mental health, or like stable mental health. And I mean, even in the Ecuadorian embassy, he knew he was being spied on 24/7. And now he is in worse conditions because he's in a maximum security prison in the UK. That's,
Yeah.
I don't think that you can make too many arguments that a maximum security prison is better than being in the Ecuadorian embassy. So yeah, it's where do you think? I mean, did it kind of seem like the judge was in agreement with what the prosecution was saying, or was there like a little bit of concern in the judge's part?
We had two judges that were there for this 2-day hearing. And it basically was that the first day, the prosecution said what its arguments were for the extradition and why the district court was wrong. And then the next day, the Assange legal team was able to get up and respond to all of those arguments. And then we heard from the prosecutor for like a half hour or so, and then it was it. And they made sure it was only 2 days, and it's hard to tell exactly, but there were a couple things that I plucked out from listening to the judges. Again, I'm very hesitant to speculate, and it really won't be long before we actually know what the decision
Right.
will be. So
Right.
I don't think it's really that good. It's not a good use of our time to speculate too much. But what I will say is when people do see the decision, they should recall that these judges seemed like people who were reluctant to set a precedent with this case. And I don't exactly know what that means, because that could mean that they go with what the U.S. government is saying because they don't want to create a barrier to extraditions. Or they might decide that there's something exceptional about Julian Assange's case. They may make that clear that they do not believe that this is something that will happen regularly, but he's a unique case, and we're going to stick by what the district judge said. But I just think it's important for people to recognize that part of the hang up that they had that was very clear during the hearing was whenever previous cases were mentioned by the defense, to say that you have these past cases which could tell you it's appropriate to block the extradition. The judges were like, whoa, we disagree, and they would raise some kind of an issue, and so they really don't want to have to rule in this as a certain way. Particularly, they don't want to rule against the extradition because of like the case law, because they don't actually believe that the case law, in my view, it didn't seem like they believed that prior cases were enough or to prevent a kind of extradition. So there's got to be something unique and new about this case that they find and identify, and then I think that's how this is going to be maintained. And I think and it's really easy to be cynical when I say that, but I would encourage people not to immediately believe that there isn't something unique or extraordinary, because we have seen a tremendous amount of focus from the US government on one single individual for sets of reasons that I don't think you could replicate in history ever again. When you look at like the amount of resources, funds, attention that Julian Assange has been given, I don't know if there's ever been anybody in our history in the 21st century that has been given that much attention. I think if you go back to the 20th century, you might have to look at like Fidel Castro or some other figures like that, or maybe like Che Guevara or what people, individuals who were so had followings and developed a kind of boogeyman status within the US government to the degree that they were spending every day trying to figure out how to neutralize those people. And so when you consider that, I think it does become unique and extraordinary. Which we're talking about a case, again, it's not like drug trafficking, it's not like sex trafficking, it's not embezzling of funds or bribery and fraud or tax evasion or something like that. It's a political offense of publishing classified information. That's journalism, and all the global press freedom organizations will tell you that the U.S. government is wrong. I'm not. Yes, most of the support for Julian Assange seems to come from the fringes. The people who actually do support Julian Assange occupy a space outside the political mainstream, but you don't find anybody within the political mainstream who will go on television and defend the prosecution against Julian Assange. What they might do is attack his character, but they never sit there and say anything relevant to the charges against Julian Assange because they know that they're indefensible.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. That's the reason why they go after his character or little personality trait, or when he was 14, he used to play with matches or whatever bullshit they want to throw out there, is because they don't have a case, right? And I think, and
Well, they have a case. It's just that it doesn't reflect well on the U.S. government that they're making this case.
right,
Uh, and because sadly, the history of cases under the Espionage Act does lead in a very dark direction, and that's where the Justice Department is choosing to go. Certainly, ambitious prosecutors could probably put Julian Assange on trial in the U.S. and succeed and win a conviction. But would our democracy, would our country as a whole be worse off? Definitely. I mean, I think if you want to get closer to solidifying our shithole country status, let's put Julian Assange on trial and let's successfully put someone who was involved as a publisher in putting out hundreds of thousands of documents, winning awards for releasing this information, doing work with media partners and having an impact globally and sparking a better understanding of a lot of issues. Let's put that individual on trial and then let's throw him in prison. I mean, I think that's really a good way to race toward the bottom. But obviously, if you want to go a different route and not do that to our country, then you're just going to say things that don't make any sense because they have nothing to do with the case. Like the preferred establishment liberal line about how he's a Russian plant who worked for Vladimir Putin in trying to help Donald Trump win the election. And I mean, there's just really scant amount of evidence that was what was going on, but we still see them say things about that, even though it has nothing to do with the prosecution, because none of the charges even have anything to do with those allegations. But that's an example of the kind of people who, if they even cover Assange on let's say cable television, you won't hear them talk about the charges. They'll just say things like, well, Robert Mueller investigated Assange and WikiLeaks and found that Russian hackers were using the organization. And they'll, I mean, I love that at the beginning of this, when he was first indicted, there was this whole deal of, we could bring him to the U.S. and Robert Mueller could ask him questions for his investigation while he's in U.S. custody. And maybe we'll get to the bottom of how Trump and Russia worked together to defeat Hillary Clinton in 2016. And we'll finally have the truth of how this all happened. And it was just the most fantasy scenario that you could ever conjure. And I don't think that would ever happen. I just don't think that if Assange was in the US, he would cooperate with FBI agents and spill the beans, unless he was getting something in return. And he already tried to get something in return from the FBI related to these Vault 7 materials that pissed off the CIA and embarrassed them, and is the reason why they launched the surveillance operation against the Ecuador embassy that Undercover Global was a part of, which was the subject of the Yahoo News report that got a lot of attention before. This was back in October, in early October. Those files, went to the. He wanted to share information with the U.S. government and come up with some kind of arrangement where he could help them and give them advice, and then have the charges go away or come up with some agreement for how this could all be resolved. And basically, U.S. Senator said that this is not, we're not going to bargain. He flipped out over it. And so it was off the table as an option for trying to resolve everything.
Well, yeah, you brought up the CIA, and I know that the plot to assassinate Julian Assange, which really, I mean, this sounds like a Hollywood movie, right? Like the plot to assassinate a journalist that is going to reveal war crimes and corporate crimes. Like it kind of just sounds like a Hollywood movie.
Well, I'll say that the report from Yahoo News, which is done by a reputable reporter named Michael Isikoff, who's been around for a long time, even did a very good whistleblower story back in the late 2000s where he gave a platform to this Justice Department lawyer who wanted to expose warrantless wiretapping by George W. Bush's administration, and was facing the potential of a criminal prosecution, and used Newsweek when Michael Isikoff was there to get this information out so that he could dodge a bullet. In this report from Yahoo News, it's evident that the people in our national security agencies are writing and developing and consulting on way too many Hollywood action spy thrillers, because they really and truly seem to believe all this garbage that's being fed to them by UC Global. We know that this private security company that was hired to work at the Ecuador embassy then developed some kind of indirect agreement that made it possible for the audio footage, or it would be the audio and then the video footage to be sent back to someone in Washington, D.C., and one of the alphabet agencies was getting this footage and accessing it. We strongly believe that that's the CIA at this point. But all of this garbage that they were pumping out and hyping the potential connections with Russia, and then everything they're saying, how they're hyping their suspicions around people who visit Julian Assange at the embassy. And that gets back to people in DC. And then Julian Assange's own attorneys are totally baffled that this is what intelligence agencies believe, because a really good report that I would encourage people to go read, it comes from John McAvoy and Pablo Navarrete. I just want to make sure I get his name. Yeah, Pablo Navarrete, they put together this story, a lot of mistakes, The Guardian and Julian Assange. But what's important is, a constructive criticism here is I think they kind of like bury the importance of their article within this critique of the Guardian. But underneath the critique of the Guardian, what we have is an interview with a lawyer whose name is Ayator Martinez. And he says basically that they were working with the Ecuador government to get him to become they were working to get a diplomatic passport for like a half dozen or so countries. And none of them were Russia, because they were well aware of what would happen since both political parties in the U.S. were hysterical and focused on tying Trump to Russia. So it wouldn't make sense to try to find a way out of the Ecuador embassy by going to Russia. So they wanted to try the countries that they wanted to try. I mean, I have this in front of me. Were Greece and Bolivia, and the other countries that they considered doing were, let me just get China, Serbia, Venezuela, or Cuba. I mean, a few of those would have been problematic for the Assange legal team, but they would have all been better than Russia at that moment because of what was going on domestically. And so then what happened is, according to Ayator Martinez, the Ecuador government, which was obviously being pressured and led in a certain direction by the Trump administration, comes back and says, oh, here's your diplomatic passport. You're going to be appointed as a special kind of minister, a ministerial position and you'll be detailed to Russia. Because the idea was that if you got a diplomatic passport for Julian Assange and appointed him to some, it's going to be a bullshit position. They were going to make it up and be like, he's a technology minister. And then he could claim a diplomatic status that would be untouchable. And if the U.S. tried to take him into custody, or the British police tried to take him into custody, it would set off a scandal because he would have diplomatic immunity. And so they were going to get him out. Ecuador, at that point, having made the decision to betray Assange, was trying to push him into the arms of Russia to further isolate him and get after him. And so they said no. Assange and his legal team was just like, this is ludicrous. Like, we're not going to go to Russia. That's not what we want to happen.
Right.
And but that's not picked up in the Yahoo News reporting. That hasn't been picked up in mainstream reporting. The acknowledgement that all this nuts Tom Clancy like story that exists in the Yahoo News report about these are you familiar with this? It says that like the Russians and the British police or British security people and U.S. security people would all be on the street, possibly outside the embassy, engaging in a shootout. And that they even got the British government to agree to shoot out the tires of a plane if it was trying to take off with Julian Assange, and if it was a Russian plane and it had Julian Assange. And, it sounds entertaining. I think it would make for a pretty good Netflix movie. I mean, maybe maybe we could get Ryan Reynolds or I don't know, maybe get Dwayne The Rock Johnson to come be one of these characters. Maybe Vin Diesel wants to do a film or something, and
get him involved.
And we can, we can have this story about someone who's in an embassy and didn't do it and is trying to be whisked off and escape London, and Russia's going to take him or China's going to take it, whatever we're going to do. But the fact is that none of this is based in any reality. And I still find it baffling that a lot of this stuff got printed from these officials that spoke about this, because if you had just picked up the phone and asked Julian Assange's legal team, they would have told you that those were that's the attitudes of the officials, and it was not the actual thing that was planned out by Julian Assange, which is what matters. And I think on one hand, I know that the people who worked on this report for Yahoo News would say that, well, they want us to all recognize that these people in the national security agencies are under delusions, and that's what's making them flip out and why they're engaged in this surveillance. But I do think that even if you're going to show that they are delusional, then the only way you clearly do that is including his legal team and making it apparent that he has never, ever seriously considered going to Russia. Because, in this article, they also try to link him to Edward Snowden, because Snowden got stuck in Russia.
Which is bizarre, because there was this big kind of shift. Maybe in 2019, at the end of 2019, I want to say it was either the end of 2019 or early 2020. But there was this bizarre shift where I remember NPR was talking to Edward Snowden. NBC did an exclusive interview with him from his apartment in Russia and stuff. And it was I thought it was interesting that they did that. And I'm glad that he got his voice out there to these kind of corporate mainstream sources, because then, and I kind of hate to say it, but those networks have a large audience that when they kind of hear this perspective now are like, oh, so maybe people like Kevin and Krish do have a point, You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it can veer them into that direction. Whether that's, very much doubt that's MSNBC or NPR's goal in mind is to push more people into, independent lefty journalism. But
Yeah.
it's bizarre that they were propping him up, and then all of a sudden in this article they're like, see, like a bad guy like Ed Snowden going to Russia and invoking all this, old school Cold War bullshit. And I mean, I'm still kind of astounded that that's still the tactic at play. I guess it's such an effective tactic that when you kind of invoke this Cold War fear, that even the most intelligent academic of liberals fall for that ploy. You mentioned that somebody is allied with Russia, or even that they've thought about going to Russia, and they're like, I knew it. Those Reds coming in, where's McCarthy? Like, that's the kind of shit that we do. It's astounding that this old tactic still plays. And I honestly don't know who to be more disappointed in, is the people that are deciding to like use this as a legitimate tactic, or the people that end up falling for it. Right? Like, I don't know who to be more disappointed in that regard. But I, again, to kind of circle back to the Edward Snowden thing, being interviewed on NPR and MSNBC, I did find it very interesting that this plot to assassinate Julian Assange was published on Yahoo News. What was
Yeah.
that kind of a surprise to you? And I know that this is going to be kind of a conjecture question, but what do you think? Why do you think Yahoo News published a story like that?
Oh, my theory is okay. So I have to say this from a place of love because I mean I don't have to. I mean I could just be an asshole about it. But I think it's better to be clear up top that I want journalists at these institutions to be investigating Assange. They're capable of getting sources.
Yeah,
When you
agreed.
contact people and you say I'm with Yahoo News or I'm with NBC News or I'm with CNN or I'm with New York Times, they listen. People
Hmm.
know those institutions. If somebody gets a thing from Shadowproof, they go, oh, my spam filter's not working. I'm gonna have to like fix it. What Shadowproof? This is like a spear phishing attack or something. Like they probably want
I, s-
my personal information.
I say
Like,
that every time I see one of your emails.
yeah,
Every I'm like,
like
Kevin,
lots of
what
Shadowproof guys again.
which
No, but like
Nigerian prince are they funding? Right.
no, but like those institutions with name brand
Hmm.
recognition have a lot of ability to do good if they choose to engage in actual journalism and instead of just advancing the interests of the people in the halls of power that they're able to access and wine and dine and chat with and spend time with because they are people who work at institutions of prestige. And so for someone like Michael Isikoff to do this story, it's good. It's good that he's using the platform that Yahoo News has in order to bring some more light to Julian Assange's case, and especially, to not just cover the obvious, to not just be like, yes, this is an attack on journalism, which we're already past that. Like the press freedom organizations have all agreed on the risks. So now we need people to understand the specifics of this. How did we get here? What led to this moment? And that report from Yahoo News does an incredible job of laying out a narrative that like I already knew existed, but I didn't have all the specific details 1.5 to 2 years ago. I mean, like I
Hmm.
suggested, based on what we knew from Mike Pompeo, that the CIA director saying WikiLeaks is a non state hostile intelligence agency is probably a signal that we should take seriously. It suggests that something is going on that we should look deeper into, and we should probably believe that a lot of what we're hearing from that agency and from Mike Pompeo is a driver in the prosecution against Julian Assange. That was my sense. And so I went and I looked at the number of times that WikiLeaks had exposed the CIA, the crimes, torture, rendition, other operations At times they challenged the CIA, times that on Twitter they had tried to pester and antagonize people in the CIA in order to show that they had the ability to air their dirty laundry. And so that was important. How did I think they got to this? This is where I am going to make people at Yahoo News unhappy, because in my view, they were working on a story probably that had to do with all the Trump and Russia or Russiagate stories that they had been churning out, because Michael Isikoff co-authored a book with David Korn on Russia. It is called, I'm going to pull it up right now. It's called Russian Roulette, the inside story of Putin's war on America.
Oh, man.
Okay.
I think that's why his name sounds so familiar. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So he had spent a lot of the Trump administration digging into the Mueller report and digging into, actually being the originator of some of these stories about Trump's connections to Russian individuals, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you want more on that, go look at a colleague of mine, Aaron Mate's interview with Michael Isikoff for Pushback, where they have Aaron's done a lot of really good work exposing the scandal of Russiagate.
Yes.
Michael Isikoff is on the other side of that. And so they actually had a good debate about some parts of this story in which I'm referring. But now I'm hypothesizing. I don't know for sure, but it's my belief that there was an effort to maybe dig into some more of this and figure out where the Assange story really fit into the Russia investigation. And he stumbled upon some damning evidence related to what was going on with the Trump administration in the prosecution against Julian Assange. And it involved the fact that internal discussions were taking place within the CIA about either kidnapping him or just outright assassinating him in the embassy. But I don't know if you get to that without first having conversations with people about, hey, is any of this true? Was he really trying to go to Russia? Did he have, I heard that he was trying to get a diplomatic passport and go to Russia. And then you talk to intelligence officials and you ask them, what did you think he was doing? How much did you believe that Julian Assange was working for Russia? And then you just keep digging and you try to figure out what is going on behind the scenes. And then eventually someone opens their mouth and says, we actually didn't like where this was going, because there are people in the CIA. There was Mike Pompeo who, had said that about him being somebody who's an operative for Russia, but, and we were okay with targeting him with surveillance, but that he was talking about how he wants to take him out because he believed he was an enemy of the CIA and he wanted to eliminate Julian Assange. And then, I think at that point, as a journalist, you'd be irresponsible if you didn't ask questions about what you were just told, and you put that together in a story. That's my theory. It could be total bullshit. It might actually be real. It may not. But my honest belief of like how you come to that story is, I have my doubts about whether Isikoff set out to do a story on Assange and WikiLeaks, just because it's the first time that he had published a story.
That's why it was so odd.
Yeah, like this isn't something he had been covering, but now having been so successful with it, I think the good thing is we've seen follow-ups. For the first time, he was actually in attendance and he watched remotely, just like I do from the States. He followed the proceedings in London when there was the appeal court hearing. And he was waiting for that moment where the legal team raised the CIA's targeting of Assange, which they talked about on the second day of the appeal hearing. I wrote an article for news, and they covered that part of the proceeding, and it was a pretty good article. And then just recently, they did an update on some reporting, which would actually be we've been getting some coverage of the Spanish criminal case against this private security company named UC Global from a Spanish newspaper called El País that actually does translate into English so that a more global audience can read it. But
nice.
But what was in the Yahoo article was an update on how the U.S. Justice Department continues to refuse to respond to requests for information from a Spanish court. There's an investigating judge that's trying to pursue a criminal case against these people who were directors or people involved in the operation against the Ecuador embassy. And Julian Assange has got the Spanish court to investigate crimes against privacy, violations of him personally, and other people who have alleged violations of their privacy, criminal violations of their privacy. And they won't give the information so that the judge can figure out, so was there an organization in the U.S. government that was helping UC Global? Who was involved? There are questions about IP addresses that were accessing certain data and other files. Who were these people in the U.S. government that were looking at this information? Things that you need to be able to identify so you can figure out how to hold these individuals who are facing crimes accountable. Like David Morales, the director of UC Global, actually faces crimes right now, and that case is stalled because the U.S. government won't cooperate. And anyways, that's a long answer to your question.
No, but there's so much amazing stuff in there, though.
But that gets us back to the fact that now we finally have a journalist in the U.S. who is going to follow the UC Global case. We didn't have that before. There wasn't anybody doing that work. Even I can't claim to be doing that because I'm not the original reporter for this information. I'm taking it from El País and I'm saying I want to amplify it so that other people can read it. But I'm not the one who's doing that journalism. I guess it is a kind of journalism to share it with people and make sure that people know that it's taking place by boosting El País's coverage. But there was no U.S. reporter covering the every week or month developments in this criminal case. Now there's a potential that Michael Isikoff and Yahoo News will continue to tell us what's going on in that case. They've also done coverage of a person who goes completely ignored, even though he remains in horrific and barbarous conditions in New York, and that's Josh Schulte, who is the alleged Vault 7 leaker who already went to trial, and that ended in a mistrial. And because the Justice Department insists on not dropping the charges, then he is stuck in these conditions that he's detailed in very gruesome detail. I can come back sometime. We can go through this because this is basically this is what Assange would face if he was ever brought to the United States, because he's in those conditions. He's under special administrative measures, the SAMs. That's the thing that the defense team's constantly detailing and suggesting would be imposed on Assange in this case.
Everybody loves SAMs. Everybody.
Well, I mean, no offense to people named Sam, but it just so happens that this is the acronym the U.S. has chosen for its crimes of torture in the prison system.
Yes, exactly. It's like everybody loves them. It's like every time anybody that, like, the Action for Assange crew, it's like if you talk to them and you bring up special administrative measures, it says that's going to invoke a rant for at least 10 to 15 minutes from either Misty or Andrew. Like somebody's going to rant about it. But unfortunately, and this isn't because I'm not interested in it. It's just
you got to wrap
time. Yeah, but it's just I haven't paid attention to the Joshua Schulte case as closely as I should, and again, it's like it's not that I'm not interested in it. It's just there's
So
so
I
much
was
stuff
just
going on,
just to
you know.
just to wrap my thought.
Yeah, yeah,
I was saying it because it's another example of now having Yahoo News people who are following it, and because it
yeah.
does link into the Assange prosecution. We got a full report and update on his case. This came after the bombshell CIA report that was in October. So just over the last months, we've had
Hmm.
Yahoo News now paying close attention. And I just would say to people that as much as we think we are completely fed up and would like to have nothing to do with establishment news, they still occupy a lot of space and can reach a lot of people. So
Yes.
it's better it's best to be critical when they are publishing shit, but when they do really good work, we shouldn't be like afraid to give them credit for doing good work, because that's
Oh,
what we want.
absolutely.
That's what we want. We want a media that does this kind of work. We want a media that is an example that covers these stories and digs into it. We want Michael Isikoff to be under the skin of the Justice Department and irritating them because he's asking questions and looking into Julian Assange. Because only, and this is my final thing I'll say, only with journalists who are digging into the origins of this case and how it's been handled, when that includes, the FBI working with this pedophile Ziggy Todarson, only when you dig into the FBI and the CIA and the Justice Department and the Trump administration and Ecuador and Sweden and the British government, only with that will we eventually get to a point where they're embarrassed and shamed and maybe get to that place where they go, all right, this just isn't worth it anymore. Let him go free. Because I honestly think that that's the end point for this. The only way that Julian Assange walks free is if we can get to a place where Joe Biden and his people just go, it just isn't worth it anymore. Let the man go free.
Right. Right. Yeah, I have one last question to ask you, and maybe this is, I always kind of throw these questions at the end, and then it's like I don't know if there's an answer for this, but um, regardless of what happens, now that we have a lot more eyes on this, thanks to the fact that Yahoo News is actually doing journalism, do you feel like this is the moment that, regardless of what happens, um, with the high court decision, do you feel like this is the moment where people are now going to start turning against the State Department rather than, kind of using them as like this champion thing? Like, is this going to wake up enough people to say, yeah, I don't want to support a government that's going to do something like this. I don't want to support a government that's going to persecute a publisher and put them through various levels of torture using the legal system. Like, do you feel like this is going to wake some folks up?
Are we talking about US citizens?
I'm talking about, yeah, U.S. citizens, yeah, like average regular people that don't normally come to Shadowproof or the Gray Zone or Mint Press News for their news. They kind of they kind of happenstance on them, right? But they don't happenstance on Yahoo News. They That's something that they subscribe to or something. They read this, they pay attention to the extradition, and then you know the decision comes out. Do you feel like a lot more people are going to sit there and look at what the decision is and the details of this case and go, okay, this was the final straw. I don't need to support a government or an organization like this anymore.
Uh, no.
No. That was fantastic. What do you think it's gonna take though? I mean,
Um,
it's in the mainstream now. We're actively talking about it. It's hard to ignore, or it's
yeah.
becoming harder to ignore. You know,
So I just well, so for one, I don't know that people will turn against institutions though. Like
Mm,
that's the thing. Like people have a whole lot of faith, misplaced faith in these individual institutions. We saw that under Trump. Like people
mm,
are looking to these places to hold up the United States when they're like actively complicit in a lot of the problems. So it's really crazy, but this country has people who support bureaucrats.
mm,
I mean, like that's like the way to put it. Basically, is like, and there are good career employees, some of them even in public sector unions, who are doing really critical work. They deserve support. Like we should have their backs. The people who are trying to make the EPA function and do its job against all odds when it is captured by the fossil fuel industry deserve our support. But like by and large, a lot of the senior people running these agencies, and when we're talking about national security, particularly in the Assange case, they're as complicit in what is happening as the political actors that are in the White House. They're responsible for this as much as Joe Biden or Donald
mm,
Trump or
mhm,
Barack Obama or George W. Bush is when they make these decisions to go after whistleblowers or a publisher like Julian Assange. And so I think the issue is getting people to recognize that this is a political case,
mhm,
but that's not because a politician made the decision. There are people who will continue on past Joe Biden, and they continue on past Donald Trump, who continue to make these choices that are bad for our democracy, our country as a whole. And so that's the thing that people need to key into. It's always the challenge, right? Like what we do in our work, I think the never ending struggle is always trying to show people that there's continuity, right? That no matter what you think about Barack Obama, no matter what you think about Donald Trump or what you think about Joe Biden, it doesn't really matter that much. Like when we get down to it, what I've learned in my 10 plus years of work on the Julian Assange case and on whistleblowers is that there's a hell of a lot of continuity and similarities between these in administrations. They continue a lot of the same destructive policies. And once you can get people to recognize that, I'm not saying it doesn't matter who we elect. It matters who we elect. The person who's in the White House does make a difference, although the people they put up for us to vote for are essentially from a very narrow club that don't have a lot of differences in their views. But what I'm trying to say is that those people aren't the reason why Julian Assange is being prosecuted. There
right.
are people in the CIA who want him to be prosecuted, or there are people in the State Department who want to go out there and give denials about why Julian Assange should be prosecuted, or give these vague answers and not engage the public, but act like there's nothing wrong with prosecuting Julian Assange, which is basically what Secretary of State Antony Blinken does now whenever he's asked about Assange. And so people just need to understand that. That's a long answer that you probably didn't want me to give
Oh,
because we were
no, it's
trying
great.
to like wrap up the show. But it was better than me just going, no.
There is a part of me that just wants to edit it and end it right there, but I think what you said was more poignant than just saying no.
But I do, that's kind of a cynical way to end. I do think that there are a lot of people who know deep down that there is no justification for prosecuting Julian Assange.
Right.
And I think that there are people who are capable of saying, and I don't take this position because it's not my view, but I do think that there are people who can say, even if I don't like Julian Assange, it is profoundly wrong for this government to keep him jailed in a prison and try to drive him mad and put him in a position where he may never get to see his kids or wife because if he goes to prison, he may be driven to commit suicide. I think there's people who can see that that is very cruel. And no matter what he's done, no matter how he's challenged the US, no matter even if he truly did associate and FaceTime Vladimir Putin at one point in his life and have a chummy conversation with him, no matter what, like that's not enough to justify what this prosecution is and what it represents. And so, they're not gonna in their daily conversations, if Assange comes up or as they're doing the infinite scroll on social media, and they see some update on Assange, they're not going to go, "Oh, well, I hope he dies."
Right.
Like, I think
Right.
those people are vocal, and there's a small minority that can get loud and wish that Julian Assange suffers and continues to suffer. But I don't actually think the crowd that wants to see Assange suffer is that big anymore. I really don't. I mean, I think maybe there were people who maybe they had pretty good numbers back in 2010, 2011, but I just don't think that people care that much. And I just don't think people have that kind of anger toward him. You have to have felt that you were wronged, that Assange did something to you in order to want him to suffer. And the only people who can say that are the people in the CIA and State Department.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or the
I mean,
Democratic Party, or the
well,
because they really believe that he hacked those emails and ruined Hillary Clinton's chances, and it's delusional. But that's the thing that they've convinced themselves of, and so so you've got the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton herself, State Department, and the CIA. Those are the only people who I think actually want to like line up, like airplane style and get a chance to like beat people over the head. And like they want to take turns having a chance to like beat Julian Assange.
I agree with that. Thank you so much for like seriously, like you every time that I email you and I'm like, hey, you want to talk about some shit? Like you're very gracious with your time. So I very much appreciate you coming back on and talking about all this stuff. And where can people find your work, and how can people support what you do as well?
Yeah. We've been talking so long that the sun set, and now I have this light. I have this lighting that makes it look like I'm talking to you from a cave. So. But if they go to the Dissenter.org, there's a newsletter that I put out regularly covering whistleblower stories and has the regular updates on Julian Assange's case. It'll also be where I do whatever I'm going to write on the high court decision. Like when the appeal there's a ruling on the appeal, then that's where it's going to be, at the Dissenter.org. And then just in general, I'm part of Shadowproof.com, and it's a really great site. If you want to dig into stuff beyond whistleblowers and Julian Assange, I have a colleague who's constantly doing stuff on prisons and policing, and it's really great stuff. So if you have any interest in that, people can go there too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. You're an invaluable resource, and I always enjoy talking to you. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That is our conversation with Kevin Gosztola, ending in a pretty hilarious way, but still a hopeful way, I think. But I had a really great time. I always have a really great time talking to Kevin. Recently, I got to do his show, Unauthorized Disclosure, the show that he co-hosts with Rania Khalek. Talking about comedy under Trump and Biden. So, go check that out. Unauthorized Disclosure with your boy, Krish Mohan. Kevin, it's one of Kevin Gosztola's projects that he's working on. The other projects, like he mentioned, the Dissenter, go to thedissenter.org. Subscribe for that newsletter. He's got some great breaking stories that he puts out once or twice a week. The most recent one right now that's up as of Thursday, December 9th, is about drone whistleblower Daniel Hale being honored by free speech groups. So, yeah, go check that out. He's also got an exclusive interview with another whistleblower, Craig Murray, who talks about being imprisoned over his blog posts. And what happened with that case and how he got released. So go check out the Dissenter, thedissenter.org, DISSENTER.org. And Kevin is also the managing editor of Shadowproof. So go check out shadowproof.com and follow Kevin on Twitter at Gosztola, KGOSZTOLA. Follow him on the old Twitter sphere and see what he says. He kills it on Twitter, man. He does a great job, and that's also the way that you can follow some of the cases that he covers as well. When he's in the courtroom, virtually or otherwise, that's where he posts a lot of information. So go follow Kevin if you haven't done so already. I feel like if you're a fan of the show, if you're a regular listener of the show, you probably already have followed Kevin. Again, I wanna let you guys know about some stuff coming up for me, for yours truly, for your boy. First and foremost, if you are in the giving spirit and would like to contribute to the things that I am doing, and this is a free way to do it, is just share. If you share out these podcasts, if you share out the videos, if you share out my comedy albums, all those things significantly help me out quite a bit, improve the quality of the shows. And if we get to a certain amount that I make every month, I'll actually be able to hire a video editor and an audio editor so that these podcasts and videos look crisper, and I can kind of focus a lot more of my time on creating that content instead of creating it and doing all of the editing work that goes into making these podcasts sound good. So, if I can get to a certain point, I would be able to hire a audio video editor. I would probably also be able to, and then once I get to another goal, I can hire like a show producer that would work with me on the back end of like live streams and the virtual shows as well. So that's kind of what right now, and my goals. I have a statement of transparency on my website that is going to get updated pretty soon with the new goals and with what your funds are helping me do and achieve. So yeah, go to my website, krishmohanhaha.com/donate. That's KRISHMOHANHAHA.com/donate to make either a one-time donation or become a recurring sustaining member making monthly contributions. By the way, a huge thank you to the folks that have already become sustaining members. You guys are amazing. Thank you. And to the people that share my content out on a pretty regular basis, hit the like button on all the social medias and the retweets and all that stuff. The people that do that, you guys are incredible too, man. I don't want to forget about you guys either. The other way that you can support your favorite independent comedians, musicians, journalists, and so on is attending events, virtual or otherwise. Obviously, with the pandemic being the way it is, if you don't feel comfortable going to a live performance, an in-person performance in your hometown or outside of your hometown, that is totally understandable. That's why we still have virtual shows. And I want to remind folks that tomorrow, December 10th, especially if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, December 10th, I am hosting a fundraiser for the DSA. Tickets are available now, and 100% of the ticket sales are going directly to the DSA to help fund this program. So I hope you guys can make it out. And if you do attend that show, you get free entrance to my show on December 11th. Which is a virtual stand-up show where I'll be running my full hour Citizen Revolution, top to bottom. We're still in the single digits at how many times I've performed this whole show, and hopefully by next year I would have been able to perform it a few more times. But that's what we're looking at. There is I'm working this show out. So if you attend the DSA show tomorrow, if you get tickets to help out the DSA and donate to them, you get free tickets to my show on December 11th. December 17th is a Forkful recording. The Forkful of Noodles monthly shows are back. And December 17th, we're going to be talking about China, their foreign policy, the history of China, what led them to be a superpower that America is terrified of, and why America is terrified of them. Why is America saying that we're going to engage in a hot war with China? Why is there so much aggression towards this country? Look, a deep dive into that. So if that is a topic that you are interested in and would like to be in the virtual theater, the virtual showroom, come out on December 17th to that virtual show. And the final show that I have is at the Fun House at Mr. Small's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on December 18th. I'm headlining the brand new comedy series that they are hosting in their venue, produced by my dear friend Zach Funk, the Fun House Mirror Comedy Show. December 18th, I'm headlining that show. Get your tickets to that show. You can get them either by going directly to Smalls and purchasing them at the window, either the day of or before the show, preferably before, or you can purchase them online as well. I will say the Fun House does check vaccination cards, or you have to prove that you had a negative COVID test. I believe 48 hours before the show. And if you are unvaccinated, they do suggest and require that you wear a mask indoors to keep everybody safe. They are doing everything they can to make sure that they don't exclude anybody from attending shows and enjoying live performances of any kind. But as much as they want people to come out to their venue, they also want to make sure that the performers that come and perform at their venue, the staff that works really hard to make these shows awesome, and the regular audience members are also kept safe. So they're doing everything they can to make sure people aren't barred out, but make sure people are also kept safe. So please do keep that in mind. If you are somebody that does not like these vax card checks and so on and so forth, please do understand that these venues are independently run. They are not corporate venues. They are DIY venues. They put a lot of effort and finances behind making sure that people aren't excluded, but are also able to be safe, because that is also a right and freedom that we have to feel healthy and safe wherever we go. So, that is something that I will say. Yeah, that I'm going to support the venue in their efforts to make sure that they can achieve both goals. So that's December 18th at the Fun House at Mr. Smalls in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Come out to these shows. I hope that you can. I hope that you do. I hope that some of you folks can come hang out with me at these shows, because they are super fun. And God damn it, if I miss live shows. I very, very much miss performing live in front of an actual crowd. In September, I did Citizen Revolution in Pittsburgh as well, and it was a small, intimate show, and God damn it, was it super fucking fun. It was super fucking fun. So I'm excited to get these live shows back, and I hope that we continue to get these live shows back. So that means please be safe this holiday season. Please don't if you're traveling, wear a mask. If you're comfortable getting vaccinated, I hope that you do get vaccinated. I hope that you do get the booster. Know that people have done their research. Like, I've talked to my sister. I've talked to a couple other people in the sciences that aren't like government officials. We're talking about people from the public health sector, and paying attention to what they're saying about it. Scientists that are also socialists. So before everybody kind of freaks out about venues checking vaccination cards and so on and so forth, just know that we're listening to what these scientists are saying, and a lot of these scientists are also independent scientists. They're not being paid off or something like that. And I think sometimes our society takes skepticism a little too far, where we can't trust anything ever, and everything is a conspiracy type of thing. And I have friends that think that way, and yeah, and it's it doesn't. I don't get mad at them. I just hope that they can find something that they can trust in, and know that I'm not trying to push them away, but I do want to remain safe and healthy. And I don't want to get this disease, So that's the statement that I'll make, because I know it's sort of a controversial topic right now to bring up, even the notion that a venue might have vaccination cards and all that. But the big thing, I do want people to stay healthy. I want people to stay safe. I want these numbers to go down so we can go back to continuing to enjoy all of the things that we enjoyed pre-pandemic without the fear of getting a pretty nasty disease. So that's my hope. That's my little public statement. Be safe. Respect each other. That's the other thing. If you're somebody that does not want to get vaccinated, and someone invites you to their Christmas party and they're like, hey, we just want to check if you're vaccinated, and you say no, and they say, well, we would think it's a lot safer if you didn't attend for that reason, everybody's vaccinated and so on and so forth. Don't get mad at that person. Understand that they have reasons, and they don't want to not invite you. They probably would love to see you. It makes them just as sad as it makes you that you're not going to be able to spend time with each other. And ask them why they got vaccinated. Maybe that other person can ask why you aren't getting vaccinated. Have a conversation about this stuff. Be respectful to each other's decisions. Understand that on our level, on a person-to-person level, most interactions that we have, most of the skepticism we have, and most of the discussions we have aren't to get the other person, to prove that the other person is better than the other, who they're having a conversation with or anything. I don't believe that is deep down what we want. So I think having a conversation about these topics is important, and being respectful to each other's beliefs and reasons. Well, you don't have to agree with them, but you can at least say, well, I understand why you chose to do what you did. I don't have the same perspective you do. Here's mine. This is why I did what I did. I hope you can understand, the decisions I'm making out of those reasons, and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm going to leave you guys with this week. We've got some pretty cool holiday content coming out in the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned for that. We've got some pretty great interviews that I've got lined up, that I've already recorded, that I'm very excited to share with you guys. So please make sure that you are subscribed. Please make sure that you share this out with as many people as you can. And we will see you guys soon. Thank you for listening. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and stay taboo, everybody. We'll see you soon.